You are listening to Julia's Trucking Cafe News Hour. And welcome to Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that you're here and that you want to listen to the trucking news. As always, I have lots of news to get to, so let's get right to it. In our first story, truckers with expiring CDLs and medical cards get another break from FMCSA. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA, has again extended a waiver to provide relief for truck drivers who have expiring licenses or medical cards amid the lingering virus crisis. Back on September 18th, the FMCSA issued an enforcement notice that extends two previous waivers that will allow many truck drivers with expiring CDLs or permits or medical cards to stay on the road. The waiver pushes back the license expiration date to the end of the year, December 31st, for those drivers who were originally required to renew their CDL on or before March 1st of 2020. The waiver also provides relief for drivers with expired or expiring medical cards. For drivers whose medical cards were valid on February 29th and expired on or after March 1st, but before June 1st, the expiration date is pushed back to October 31st, 2020. For drivers whose medical cards expired on or after June 1st, the expiration date is moved back to December 31st. So if you have a medical card, in other words, long story short, that expired after June 1st, then your expiration date is moved back to December 31st. The waiver also suspends the requirement that commercial license permit holders wait 14 days to take the skills test until December 31st. And our next story, drivers who injure highway protesters while fleeing for safety will be protected under bold new legislation. This week, the week of September 22nd, The week of September 22nd, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis introduced new legislation amid curbing violent protest activities. The Combating Violence, Disorder and Looting and Law Enforcement Protection Act debuted on Monday, September 21st. The proposed law creates new criminal offenses, increases penalties, and takes measures that DeSantis says will protect the public from violent protest activities. Notably, the legislation would create a new criminal offense in the state of Florida that would make it a third-degree felony to obstruct a roadway during an unpermitted protest, demonstration, or violent or disorderly assembly. The proposed legislation would also ensure that a driver is not liable for injury or death caused if fleeing for safety from a mob. DeSantis would also create criminal offenses for the following activities. Third-degree felony when 7 or more people are involved in an assembly or cause damage to property or injury to other persons. Second-degree felony to destroy public property during a violent or disorderly assembly. First-degree misdemeanor for a participant in a violent or disorderly assembly to harass or intimidate a person at a public accommodation, such as a restaurant. RICO liability attaches to anyone who organizes or funds a violent or disorderly assembly. That needs to go nationwide, not just in Florida. Also, under this new legislation, a person who strikes a law enforcement officer could face a 6-month mandatory minimum jail sentence. DeSantis' proposal would also forbid the defunding of Florida police departments and allow protest victims to sue protesters for damages. Anyone convicted of participating in a violent or disorderly assembly would be ineligible for state benefits or government employment under the DeSantis plan. Bail or bond would also not be permitted until first appearance in court for persons charged with a crime related to participating in a violent or disorderly assembly. In other words, a riot or a protest. Quote, our right to peaceably assemble is one of our most cherished as Americans, but throughout the country we've seen that right being taken advantage of by professional agitators bent on sowing disorder and causing mayhem in our cities, said Governor DeSantis, end quote. Quote, I will not allow this kind of violence to occur here in Florida, end quote. The legislation announced today will not only combat rioting and looting, but also protect the men and women in law enforcement that wake up every day to keep us safe. I look forward to working with Florida legislature next session to sign this proposal into law. The next legislative session begins March 2021, but DeSantis says that his team is already at work crafting the bill and collecting sponsors. The proposed legislation comes after a spring and summer of nearly daily civil unrest during which members of the trucking community were often unwillingly caught up in protest activities, as we all know. And up next, 9 are charged with staging accidents with trucks and defrauding companies of nearly $300,000. With the addition of 9 new indictments, 28 people now have been charged in a federal probe in the staging of automobile accidents in Louisiana, according to U.S. Attorney Peter G. Strasser. The 9 defendants were charged in a 7-count federal indictment with 1 count of conspiracy to commit mail fraud in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 371 and 6 counts of mail fraud in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1341. This indictment alleges that the defendants intentionally used vehicles to cause staged motor vehicle accidents with commercial carriers in order to defraud those carriers and their insurance companies in 3 incidents on 2 separate days. According to the indictment, at least 1 attorney paid 2 people to stage accidents in New Orleans. Following each incident, participants were referred back to the attorneys, who subsequently referred the parties to medical providers for treatment to increase the value of related lawsuits. If convicted, the defendants face a maximum penalty of 5 years for count 1 and 20 years as to counts 2 to 7. Upon the release from prison, each defendant can be placed on a term of supervised release for up to 5 years and fined up to $250,000 per count, or twice the gross gain to the defendant of twice the gross loss to the victim. The current indictment involves 2 separate incidents which the victim trucking, bus, and insurance companies paid out approximately $277,500 for the fraudulent claims. U.S. Attorney Strasser reiterated that the indictment is merely a charge and that the guilt of the defendants must be proven beyond reasonable doubt. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the current indictment is connected to a previous one involving 5 people who were charged in a similar staged accident scheme involving tractor-trailers. So this is 2 indictments now. This is the second one on people staging accidents in New Orleans, and I've reported the brains behind the previous scheme was already sentenced. The U.S. Attorney's Office would also like to acknowledge the assistance of the FBI, Louisiana State Police, etc., etc., etc. And up next, shooting at a Connecticut trucking company leaves 2 injured. A shooter is in custody after opening fire at a logistics company in South Windsor, Connecticut. The shooting occurred around 9 in the morning at Independent Tractor Repair located at 105 Edwin Road. This happened the end of September. According to South Windsor Police, 2 of the company employees got into an argument. One of the employees opened fire on the other one, brilliant, leaving him with gunshot wounds on the arm and the leg. Another person was reportedly injured by shrapnel from the gunfire. Both people were taken to the hospital and are expected to survive. The shooter fled the scene but was spotted by police driving on Interstate 91. Police followed the suspect to the Massachusetts border, where local and state police were on hand to assist with the felony traffic stop and arrest. A pistol was reportedly found inside the suspect's vehicle, and the shooter is being held by the Massachusetts State Police. Now, in this next article, the images that you are about to see may be graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. And a driver survives after being pulled from virtually a disintegrated semi-truck. A truck driver survived a multiple vehicle crash that completely obliterated his rig in Michigan. The accident happened at Casco Township, Michigan on Interstate 196 near exit 22 on Friday, September 18th around 5:15. According to the local news, a J.B. Hunt semi-truck was parked on the shoulder of I-196 northbound for a tire repair when a second semi-truck suddenly slammed into it. The force of the impact completely obliterated the second truck and left the driver with multiple injuries. Can we say you were driving too effing fast? Both the truck driver and the repairman were transported to nearby hospitals. The driver of the J.B. Hunt truck was apparently uninjured. Interstate 196 northbound was shut down at exit 20 while officials investigated the incident and cleared up the wreckage. They didn't say exactly what happened to the repair guy who was trying to fix the J.B. Hunt tire, but you could see here in the photo that if you watch the video version of this, will be episode 101, that the cab of the second truck was literally on its roof, completely disintegrated, and you'll see the chassis perpendicular in front of the J.B. Hunt truck and the cab of the semi upside down perpendicular to the trailer of the semi-truck of J.B. Hunt truck. You know, and the driver survived. Just, that's crazy. In this next article, a trucker warns others after his windshield is shattered on Interstate 70. This is the week of the 22nd of September, A truck driver took to social media to warn others to use caution after his windshield was shattered by an object as he was traveling on West Virginia Interstate. This happened September 19th. I'll make that short. In this next article, targeted enforcement coming after big rigs keep crashing on the West Virginia roadway. A West Virginia lawmaker says that he has asked for amped-up law enforcement patrols on the Putnam County roadway after multiple semi-truck rollovers. Senator Glenn Jeffries says that he has requested targeted enforcement patrols on Route 35 in Putnam County after two tractor-trailers crashed in the same location just hours apart. The Sunday night crash left the truck driver with serious injuries. A part of the targeted enforcement, Jeffrey says that there will be no warnings issued, only citations. Police say that many of the Route 35 crashes are a result of trucks taking the curves too fast. Of course, pretty much any accident down here, for the most part involving tractor-trailer, is speed-related. Yes. I keep telling everybody, slow the hell down. Jeffrey said that he has contacted the West Virginia Department of Transportation for additional funding to pay for the patrols until the new Route 35 opens. And travel restrictions in place in Louisville as city braces for possible civil unrest. There again, I understand that when you're listening to this stuff happened back in September, but I'm still trying to stay consistent with doing a weekly show, even though like I said, I'm running extremely far behind. Just life has gotten in the way, and I'm trying really hard to play catch up, as always. So and this is, a lot of people don't know about this if they don't know how to look for the news or catch the news or anything like that. So it's always, good for people to figure out, what's going on or what went on in the rest of the part of the country. So back to this article. City officials in Louisville, Kentucky have declared a state of emergency and are preparing for possible protests as the Attorney General nears a decision in a high-profile case. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron is expected to make an announcement regarding the investigation into police-involved shooting death of Breonna Taylor. Remember all about Breonna. In response, Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher signed an executive order on September 22nd declaring a state of emergency due to the possibility of civil unrest. The Louisville Metro Police also declared a state of emergency that canceled all officer vacations and time off requests. In a prepared announcement, they issued a statement on Tuesday outlining several travel restrictions that will be put in place as a precaution. They will place vehicle barricades around Jefferson Square Park and the perimeter of the downtown area to ensure pedestrian safety. It will further restrict vehicles access in the blocks immediately surrounding Jefferson Square Park, allowing only pedestrian access. Barriers will be placed at all intersections. They will be restricting vehicle traffic in the downtown area between Market Street south to Broadway, from 2nd Street to Roy Wilkins. Police will work with people who live, work, and have business in this area to allow necessary access. They will be limiting service parking on the streets from Market Street to Broadway, 2nd Street to Roy Wilkins. Request that anyone who has vehicles parked in this area take steps to immediately remove them, and will be limiting access to parking garages in that area. And up next, a crash leaves a semi-truck in a precarious position over a ramp. Washington State Patrol says that a truck driver survived a frightening crash that left his truck hanging off of I-5 express lanes in Seattle. The unusual crash occurred around 11 a.m. on Wednesday, September 23rd in the southbound I-5 express lanes near Mercer Street. Washington State Patrol described the crash as a one semi-collision over the barrier hanging over the ramp at Mercer, but it isn't yet clear how the crash occurred. The truck driver was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. The Seattle Fire Department is working to secure the truck. The troopers say that the express lanes could be closed for an extended period of time. He definitely is overhanging. And yeah, he missed something. He went over the guardrail and is hanging between two monster bridges about 40-50 feet up in the air. And the men are arraigned on charges after setting fire to that semi-truck that I've been reporting on during the riots in New York City. The two Albany, New York men have been arraigned on charges after allegedly setting a semi-truck on fire and attempting to set a police car on fire during those riots back that happened in May. Parker faces charge of one count for attempted aggravated assault on a police officer as a crime of terrorism, Class B violent felony, one count of attempted aggravated assault upon a police officer, a Class C violent felony, one count of attempted assault in the first degree, a Class C felony, one count of arson in the third degree, a Class C felony, one count of riot in the first degree, a Class E felony, and one count of criminal mischief in the second degree, a Class D felony. So you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 felonies he's charged with. Excuse me a second, I had to take a drink. Boyd has been charged with one count of arson in the third degree, a Class C felony, one count of attempted arson in the third degree, a Class D felony, and one count of criminal mischief in the second degree, a Class D felony. Boyd has pleaded not guilty to the charges and was released on bond, of course. Parker has also pled not guilty, but he remains in jail. And in this story, a drive-by shooting ends in a crash with a parked trailer. A drive-by shooting ended in a crash with a semi-trailer in North Carolina. The incident occurred in Durham, North Carolina on September 22nd. According to the local news, the victim was driving their car along the 2100 block of Cheek Road when an occupant in another vehicle fired a shot. The shot wounded the victim and they lost control, sending them crashing into the front of a trailer parked on the side of the road. The victim was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. No other injuries were reported, and it's was under investigation at the time. And now in this story, California is to ban the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. The government of California signed a major executive order that will prohibit the sale of gasoline-powered vehicles in an attempt to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. On the 23rd, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a sweeping new executive order to require that 100% of in-state sales of new passenger cars or trucks will be zero emission by 2035. Well, guess what, numbnut? People are just going to go out of state and buy cars. California, or they'll just move. California will be the first state in the U.S. to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles. The executive order also states that, quote, it shall be a further goal of the state that 100% of medium and heavy-duty vehicles be zero emission by 2045 for all operations where feasible, and by 2035 for drayage trucks. It shall be further a goal of the state to transition to 100% zero emission off-road vehicles and equipment by 2035 where feasible. Newsom also uses the executive order to direct the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, to create passenger vehicle and truck regulations requiring increasing volumes of new zero-emission vehicles sold in the state towards a target of 100% of in-state sales by 2035. Medium and heavy-duty vehicle regulations, and I'll let you read the rest. I'm not going to bore you with this. So California is looking to ban all gas-powered vehicles. Well, guess what? If we can't go in there to deliver you food, I guess you got to go hungry now, ain't you? And up next, 15,000 Volvos are recalled for defect that could cause brake pedal to dislodge. Volvo Trucks North America is issuing a major recall for more than 15,000 trucks for a brake defect. According to NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that was published September 22nd, the die-cast pedal plate may break at one of its attachment points, possibly resulting in the brake pedal dislodging. The brake pedal could then be inoperable and would increase the risk of a crash. You think? 15,156 trucks are affected by this recall. Volvo VH 2020 to 2021, VHD 2020 to 2021, VNL 2020 to 2021, VNR 2020 to 2021. Glad I got a 2018. The recalls is expected to begin October 30th. Owners may contact Volvo Trucks customer service at 1-800-458-1552 and use the number for this recall as R, V as in Victor, X as in X-ray, X as in X-ray, 2004. And remember, I was just talking about the curfew and everything in Louisville? Well, they deployed the National Guard. Protesters are gathering in Louisville, Kentucky after charges were announced in the police shooting death of Breonna Taylor. On Wednesday, a Jefferson County grand jury indicted former police officer Brett Hankinson on 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree for his role in Taylor's death. A warrant was then issued for his arrest. Hankinson was one of 3 officers involved in Taylor's fatal shooting. Protesters who were angry that Hankinson was not charged with Taylor's death are now gathering and kept seeing the videos marking the streets. In response, Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher issued a 72 curfew that begins at 9 p.m. tonight, 72-hour, I believe that is. Well, he wasn't charged with murder. The National Guard has also been deployed in the city. And up next, a waterlogged cab proves drowsy driving is no joke. A truck driver was able to escape his half-submerged cab on his own after falling asleep while driving. Talk about going into the drink. This happened Wednesday, September 23rd, around 10 o'clock at night in Delphos, Ohio. Truck driver says he was driving east along US 30 near Lehman Road when he fell asleep at the wheel, sending his truck veering across the median and crossing westbound lanes before crashing headfirst into a pond. I guess he wanted to go fishing. The force of the crash halfway submerged the cab of the truck, but the driver was able to escape on his own with only minor injuries, said the local news outlet. When first responders arrived, the identified truck driver admitted that he had fallen asleep. And in other news, a truck driver sentenced to less than 2 years for fatal distracted driving collision. A truck driver will spend just under 2 years in jail for a distracted driving accident that killed a couple on their way to their wedding. Jaspreet Khalil was sentenced this week for a fatal crash that occurred back in November 2018 in Pennsylvania, killing Joseph Kearney and Catherine Schertz. According to the local news outlet, Khalil was talking on his phone while driving along Interstate 78 when he slammed into a line of stopped vehicles. The impact of the collision pushed the couple's SUV into another semi, and all three vehicles erupted into flames. He pled guilty to homicide by vehicle and several other charges. He will spend 11 and a half to 23 months in jail and 2 months on probation. Well, it's vehicular homicide. He should get more than a year to 2 years in jail, for crying out loud, for that. Really, he didn't do it intentionally, but still. I swear to goodness. And up next, a truck driver is charged for several motor vehicle crashes after operating rig while he was impaired. A truck driver has been charged with driving under the influence after causing multiple accidents. The series of crashes occurred in Salt Lake City on September 17th. According to the police affidavit, 33-year-old Jeremiah Colby Olson was involved in several motor vehicle crashes. The first of which occurred on Highway 89, where Olson crossed the center line and sideswiped a semi. After sideswipe, Olson continued driving onto Route 12 before pulling into a restaurant and hotel parking lot, where he struck a couple of buildings. Then continued on to Garfield Landfill, where a witness watched him drive off the road several more times. When the police eventually caught up with him, officers say they witnessed him stumble out of his truck and attempt to stumble away from troopers. Upon investigation of the rig, officers discovered an open bottle of alcohol in the cab. The Olson claimed that he drank a lot last night before going to sleep, but nothing today. The affidavit also states that when questioned, several other truck drivers divulged that they believe Olson may have a drinking and meth problem. On the 23rd, Olson was charged with criminal mischief, second-degree felony, failing to report an accident, DUI, refusing a chemical test, all Class B misdemeanors, as well as having an open container in his vehicle, a Class C misdemeanor. And I hope he got his CD. If he was in a CDL, I hope he got it pulled. And a motorist dies after a dump truck with bed up knocks down a highway sign onto a pickup truck. The Ohio State Police is investigating after a motorist was fatally struck by an overhead highway sign. This happened the 23rd of September at 8:30 in the morning around Cleveland. According to State Patrol, a dump truck with a raised bed was traveling westbound on I-480 when it struck the overhead sign at State Road. The crash caused the sign to collapse onto a Ford F-150. The pickup truck driver died as a result of the sign falling on the vehicle. I don't see how that could happen, because the cab looks completely fine, unless it scared him to death. I mean, the cab of the pickup truck you see in the picture, which you can also see in the show notes on episode 101, looks completely fine. The Ohio DOT says the dump truck had recently left a construction site. Investigators are trying to determine whether the raised bed was an operator error or a mechanical problem. And now let's take
this episode of Julia's Truckin' Cafe is brought to you by My Patriot Supply.
As truck drivers, we all know what it's like to be at a shipper's or receiver's and have to wait to be loaded for hours on end. Am I right? Especially produce coolers and paper mills. That's why you need to be prepared with extra food in your truck, especially with the bad weather coming in, like it is over here in Kansas, up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. 90 was shut down, Interstate 94 was shut down, along with 29. What are you going to do if there's no food and a truck stop was without power? That's why you need to stay prepared with My Patriot Supply. Now, it's not what you're thinking. My Patriot Supply is delicious emergency food. They have food kits that are good up to 25 years. They come in a slimline tote that you can easily store in your food pantry or under your bunk. I could speak from experience. After living through Hurricane Katrina, we were without power for 10 days, me, my mother, and son, and I. If it weren't for the MREs that were flown into us, we wouldn't have any food. There was 4 60-foot pine trees that broke in half during that storm and crossed my driveway and landlocked me in. That's when My Patriot Supply would have come in handy. If I knew then what I know now about My Patriot Supply, I definitely have some of this food stockpiled in my pantry. Now, for a limited time, you could get a 1-week supply of food in a handy and neat-looking ammo can, like you see here, for just $39. Look at all that food you get. It's a week's worth of breakfast, lunch, and dinners, just for $39. How do you get it? Where do you go, do you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Just go to my website at juliastrucketcafe.com, click on the Emergency Food Supply tab, scroll down and click on any of the images to find out more information and get yours today. They even offer gluten-free food for under $100. Winter weather is here. What would you do if the interstate was shut down, just like I was talking about? You need to get My Patriot Supply and get it today. So we have more news to get to. A man is indicted for staging a New Orleans semi-truck crashes. Was murdered, police say. A man who was believed to have been working with authorities in their investigation into a sprawling fraud scheme involving staged truck crashes in New Orleans was shot to death. Cornelius Garrison, 54, was fatally shot in a New Orleans apartment complex. The fatal shooting came less than a week after Garrison was indicted on charges related to a widespread federal investigation into insurance fraud tied to dozens of staged truck crashes in the New Orleans area. Garrison's federal public defender said that Garrison had expressed concern for his safety and that the shooting death could be connected to the federal probe. He's indicted Friday afternoon, and less than a week later he's murdered. You have to be the village idiot not to see the connection, his lawyer said. With federal investigators have not confirmed that Garrison was cooperating, local news outlet reports that multiple sources say that Garrison had been working with investigators with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for months. In court documents, Garrison was described as one of the ringleaders in the fraud scheme who worked as a slammer who was behind the wheel with a vehicle full of people when he intentionally caused crashes with semi-trucks. Garrison also reportedly worked directly with attorneys who were also helping to orchestrate the scheme. Garrison is accused of staging more than 50 truck crashes in exchange for more than $150,000. The FBI joined the New Orleans Police Department in this investigation. And now a truck driver helps a woman with a child flee from an abusive partner. A hero truck driver helped a woman with a child flee from an abusive situation on an Arizona highway. The incident occurred September 20th, approximately 11 o'clock at night. The victim told Arizona Department of Public Safety troopers that she attempted to leave her Arizona apartment, but Michael Andrew Brock, 25, allegedly restrained her and wouldn't let her leave to go to her father's house. Later, Brock agreed to let her leave, but said that he was going with her and the couple's 3-year-old daughter. While on the highway, Brock allegedly began slapping the victim and pointing a gun at her head. Victim told police that she was able to stop the vehicle and flee with her daughter. She was then able to wave down a truck driver who stopped to help. The truck driver got the victim and her daughter into the truck safely. The victim was then taken to a hospital for treatment of head trauma. Brock was arrested and admitted to threatening to harm the mother of his child. He was arrested and faces charges of aggravated assault, kidnapping, harassment, and child abuse. Yeah, and he looks like he's got a bunch of numbers tapped on his side of his neck, too. And up next, in other news, truck driver who shot a boss was angry over truck assignment. Oh boy, what is this coming to? Connecticut police have released new information about a workplace shooting that left 2 people injured. South Windsor Police Department announced that truck driver Alan Rosario, 33, has been charged with assault, threatening, reckless endangerment, illegal discharge of a firearm. The charges were issued in connection with the morning shooting at Independent Truck and Tractor Repair in South Windsor, Connecticut. Police say that Rosario got into an argument with the supervisor over the phone over which truck would be assigned to which driver, while the supervisor was headed back to the parking lot of the business. Rosario later told police that his boss had been assigning him 2 trucks that do not work for years. Police said that Rosario was waiting for the supervisor when he returned to the business lot. While the supervisor was still sitting in his truck, Rosario attempted to enter the cab and physically remove him from the vehicle. Getting a little testy, aren't you, Rosario? As he did so, his gun fired and the supervisor was struck in the arm and the leg. Oh, it just happened to go off. I just don't know what happened. You're right. A passenger also in the cab of the truck was struck below the eye by debris or a bullet fragment. This person had been identified as 33-year-old Eric Estevez, who was a new employee at the business. Both the supervisor and Estevez were taken to the hospital for treatment and released. Rosario, of course, he ran from the scene and was later taken into custody at gunpoint on I-91 in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. What are you running for? Rosario later told police he did not intend to fire on the supervisor and that the gun went off on accident. Sure it did. Police said that the identity of the supervisor would not be released due to a familial relationship. Rosario was held on $250,000 bond and is scheduled to appear in Rockville Superior Court. I hope they throw the book at him. Gives the rest of us drivers a damn bad name. A trucker is forced to take the entrance ramp to avoid hitting a merging car. And we see this all the time. So I'm not going to bore you with that little story. All right, 1 second. And then again, end of September, protests erupted in dozens of cities, shutting down interstates all across the country. St. Louis, Missouri, we know about. St. Paul, Minnesota. Bay Area, California. Providence, Rhode Island. Philly. Milwaukee. Monona, Wisconsin. And on and on and on. And in this story, a gunman still at large after trucking yard shooting. Another trucking yard shooting. This happened in Canada. Oy. It was still at large as of September 25th. I'm sure they caught him. Gunman is still at large after fatally shooting a man at a trucking yard. The incident occurred around 6:50, Toronto, Canada. A truck driver picking up his rig discovered a man suffering from gunshot wounds at the yard and promptly called the police. Police and paramedics responded to the call but were unable to save the victim's life, and he died at the scene. In that enclosed trucking yard, we did locate a male who was suffering from gunshot wounds. Paramedics did arrive quickly on the scene. Said one of the policemen during the incident, a nearby daycare was put on lockdown as a precaution. Police were still investigating the incident, reviewing security camera footage and speaking to witnesses. So feel bad that that person passed away. And up next, 2 oversized loads strike I-20 overpass in 30 minutes. Texas Department of Transportation is reminding truckers to know your load after 2 oversized load bridge strikes occurred in the same place in less than an hour. The bridge strikes occurred in Midland, Texas. So, on Thursday, September 24th, an oversized load traveling westbound on Interstate 20 struck the Cotton Flat Road Bridge. The driver fled the scene and was apprehended at Interstate 20 and Loop 250. The driver was identified as Ray Hanna of Midland, Texas, with 3S West Tex Trucking and Transport. Hanna was cited for overheight and overweight group of axles and received warnings for failure to secure heavy machinery, failed to secure load, tire load exceeds weight rating federal violation, over allowed gross weight, and striking the bridge and over tire size limitation. While investigating the first crash around 3:40 p.m., a second oversized load struck the bridge, causing minimal to no damage. The driver of that oversized load was identified as Brian Nimschek of Gary, Texas, with lighting services. Nimschek was cited for overheight, failing to inspect emergency equipment, for warnings for striking the bridge, and no warning devices. Both vehicles were placed on a federal out-of-service order. So yeah, don't be striking bridges. That ain't cool. In this next story, a truck driver is caught smuggling 31 immigrants across the border in a belly dump trailer. Border Patrol agents took 31 undocumented immigrants, illegals, into custody after completing a search of a belly dump trailer. This happened September 23rd when a truck hauling a belly dump trailer approached the checkpoint in Laredo. A canine alerted to the presence of concealed humans, and 31 illegals were found inside. After the discovery, Webb County Fire Department assisted agents by supplying individuals a manner to climb down from the height of the trailer, in other words, from the top of the trailer. Individuals were determined to be illegally present in the U.S. from the countries of Mexico and Guatemala. The driver, a U.S. citizen, was arrested and is pending further investigation. The rest of the individuals were taken into custody. Homeland Security investigations took over the investigation, and Border Patrol seized the truck. Yeah, they're still trying, ain't they? How many they take over, they catch in September? August, I'm so far behind. And up next, a driver fails to appear in court for a crash that killed a family of 6. A bench warrant has been issued for the arrest of a driver who was accused of killing a family of 6 in a crash that took place several years ago in Los Angeles County, California. The driver, Richard Lopez, 73, is pending his 3rd trial related to the fatal crash. Lopez faced 6 counts of misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter and 1 misdemeanor count of failing to comply with California Highway Patrol rules regarding hours of service. He probably went back to Mexico. The crash took place on June 28, 2016. Killed Connie, 33, Flora, 33, Jaden, 5, Lucas, 3, Sky, 4, and Venus, 2. The family was inside a van that broke down and was partially blocking the right lane near Gorman School Road. Allegedly, Lopez had not rested the legally mandated 10 hours after he'd been driving for more than 15 hours when he struck the van around 3:30 in the morning. Lopez's second trial, which took place in 2019, ended in a hung jury. Their 7-5 vote in favor of Lopez's guilt on the manslaughter charges led to a mistrial being declared. However, Lopez was convicted of the misdemeanor count of failing to comply with California Highway Patrol regulations as a commercial driver. March 12, 2020, Lopez was sentenced to probation, 90 days in jail, 10 days of community labor, and suspension of his CDL for the charge. Lopez did not appear for his September 18 court date regarding a 3rd trial for his remaining misdemeanor vehicle manslaughter charges. A bench warrant was issued for his arrest as a result, and a new hearing was set for October 15th. I will keep you posted on what happens there. And up next, one dead in an early morning crash involving construction vehicles in North Carolina. North Carolina State Highway Patrol says that one person passed away as a result of a multi-vehicle crash involving a semi-truck and construction vehicles. Slow the hell down in construction zones. The crash occurred around 2 in the morning on Monday, September 28th on Interstate 77 in North Carolina. According to the fire department, a tractor-trailer traveling south on the interstate struck multiple construction vehicles. Initial reports indicated that there were no injuries, and it was a forward air truck. However, new reports say that 2 people were taken to the hospital, one with serious injuries. North Carolina troopers said that the person with the serious injuries later died. The crash shut down a portion of I-77 southbound for several hours, but all lanes have reopened. Guess what, dude? Vehicular manslaughter. Oy. And suicidal woman guilty of attempted murder after driving into a fuel tanker. Wow. A Florida woman who attempted to end her life by driving into a fuel tanker with her 2 young children in the car was found guilty of attempted murder. The incident occurred August 16th of 2019 in Gainesville. Police say that Melissa Gail Mack, 49, was traveling on US 441 with her 4-year-old son and 6-year-old son in her car when she switched from the northbound lane to the southbound lanes in an attempt to ram a gas tanker truck head-on. The tanker truck driver, Paul Dale Hackbarth, I remember reporting on the story back then, was able to take evasive action to avoid Mack's vehicle. However, after the failed attempt, police say that Mack doubled back and rammed the tanker from the rear. The collision caused Mack's vehicle to catch fire and left all 3 occupants trapped inside. Police say that 2 Good Samaritans were able to pull out the fire and pull all 3 people in the crash vehicle to safety. And luckily no injuries were reported. I hope they jerked their kids away from her. She was found guilty of 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted degree second murder. Sentencing date has not yet been set. A woman is fatally struck by a semi-truck in this article after stabbing a fellow motorist. A woman is dead after running into traffic following a serious confrontation with another motorist. This happened in Orange County, Florida on September 26th. According to Florida Highway Patrol, 30-year-old woman was riding in a car with a 27-year-old male driver heading east along Interstate 4 when the 2 got into an argument. As the argument escalated, the male driver pulled the car onto the shoulder of the highway near mile marker 68, where the woman reportedly broke a bottle, stabbed the man with the jagged glass before running directly into the path of an oncoming semi. The woman was pronounced dead at the scene, but the truck driver suffered no injuries. The victim in the stabbing was transported to a nearby hospital, but the severity of his injuries is not known. Both the Florida Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Office were still investigating. And a truck driver is found deceased in his truck at an Ohio fuel station. 46-year-old truck driver is found deceased in his truck at an Ohio fuel station over the weekend of September 28th after his brother requested police perform a well check on him. The victim spoke with his brother around midnight on a Friday night. The victim told his brother that he was stopping for the night because he didn't feel well. Following that call, his brother had made multiple attempts to contact him, but all of his calls went unanswered. Saturday, the victim's brother grew worried, so he called the County Sheriff's Department and asked them to perform a wellness check on him. The deputies arrived at a Speedway fuel stop at approximately 9:05 a.m. on Saturday. When they arrived, the deputies looked at the truck's windows and were able to see the victim's face and arm. The truck was locked, but a window was partially opened, so a deputy reached through the open window and was able to unlock the door. The deputy entered the truck and found the truck driver deceased. Authorities believe the driver had been deceased for several hours prior to the discovery of his body. There was no signs of foul play. An autopsy will be performed to determine the cause of death. The identity of this driver has not been released. So our thoughts and prayers are with this driver's family. And an unmanned rig rolls straight into a sushi restaurant after a colossal brake failure. The truck driver thought it was an earthquake. He had no idea what was happening. As a USF Holland, I think, USF truck, a local truck. Police are blaming a colossal brake failure after a semi rolled into the side of a Japanese restaurant. The accident happened on September 25th around 2 in the afternoon at Port Angeles, Washington. Police say that the truck was stopped at Thurman Supply on East Front Street to make one of its final deliveries when the driver locked the air brakes on the rig and headed into the trailer. As the driver worked inside of the trailer, the air brakes on the tractor apparently failed, sending the nearby nearly empty truck rolling down a steep hill. The truck driver thought it was an earthquake. He had no idea what was happening. He threw himself onto a pallet to ride it out. As the rig rolled, it struck a nearby pickup truck, spun it around, pushed it partway down the hill, which knocked the pickup truck driver to the ground. Semi-truck then rolled through an alley and into the side of Okasan restaurant, where it came to a stop 4 feet inside of the lobby and bathroom area. The driver of the pickup was taken to a nearby hospital with minor injuries, but was released later that day. Officials say that because there was very little weight at the back of the truck, the brakes on the trailer were unable to stop the heavy tractor from rolling. Officer Johnson also points out that while still an unfortunate event, the situation could have been much worse. If that had been happening while he was driving on Front Street, that had been a mass casualty event. The way it occurred had the lowest volume of damage. I wonder why the brakes failed. And up next, a truck driver is ejected after a fatal collision with a train. A truck driver was killed over the weekend after his rig was struck by a train. This happened September 26 around 2:30 in the afternoon, just south of Rockport, Missouri. Missouri State Highway Patrol reports 52-year-old truck driver Troy Landis was attempting to use a private railroad crossing near Highway 111 when his Mack truck was struck by an oncoming train. The force of the impact partially ejected Landis from the cab. He was promptly transported to the hospital, but succumbed to his injuries. The railroad crossing was controlled by a stop sign, and Landis was wearing a seatbelt at the time of the crash. See? There are times when seatbelts do not save lives, just saying. And up next, a man survives being pinned beneath a loaded trailer. A man survived after being pinned beneath a loaded trailer in Illinois. This again happened Saturday, September 26th around 2:30 in the afternoon at a residence of Peoria, Illinois. Man was attempting to fix the connection between the trailer and the vehicle when the trailer collapsed, trapping his legs beneath it. Witnesses say a bystander with a bobcat then used the machine to lift a portion of the trailer, freeing one of the man's legs as they awaited the arrival of firefighters. Quote, a bystander on scene that was helping the person load the trailer stated they were having problems with the trailer and the connection to the semi. The victim climbed onto the trailer and had placed his legs underneath the trailer. The move. While trying to fix the problem with the connection, the trailer collapsed, pinning the person's legs underneath the trailer. When firefighters arrived at the home, the man was sitting on top of the collapsed trailer with one leg still trapped, so they went to work using the inflatable airbags to lift the trailer further and fully extricate the man from the situation. The unidentified man was then transported to the hospital less than 10 minutes after the initial 911 call was placed. The extent of his injuries, if any, were not known at the time. The trailer was loaded with a man lift at the time of the accident. And our last story for this episode, 4 interstate shootings reported in 4 days in Indianapolis. Indiana State Police are looking for more information after a series of interstate shootings targeted both motorists and a truck driver. According to September 28th news release, 4 shootings occurred from Friday through early Monday morning on interstates around the Indianapolis area. 1 person was injured as a result of the shootings. First shooting occurred Friday, September 25th around 3:30 in the afternoon on I-465. Second shooting occurred just hours later, around 10:15, when a dark sedan fired shots at a gold Lexus. Was occupied by 2 17-year-old juveniles. And then Sunday afternoon, September 27th at 4:30 in the afternoon, a brown semi-truck was struck by gunfire on I-74 westbound on 70-mile marker, which is just west of I-465. The driver was not injured. The detectives are looking for an older Model tan Chevy Tahoe. It was driven by a black male. Driver of that Tahoe allegedly fired shots from a handgun. And then Monday, September 28th, around 2:30 in the morning, an 18-year-old male was shot while driving a gray Chevy Impala on I-465 northbound around the 20-mile marker near I-65 on the city's west side. He was driven to the hospital by a bystander, and the Chevy Impala was left on I-465. The suspect vehicle in this incident was described as a black Dodge Charger with tinted windows. It's gangs. It's gang violence. So, it just never ends. And sometimes, I just have to take a break from all this bad stuff that's going on out in society. So there again, I apologize for not constantly reporting on the news, but it gets to you after a while, I greatly, greatly appreciate each and every one of you who tune in to listen to me each week here on the cafe. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe using the link below, or on CloudHub, please subscribe at the top of the page. I greatly, greatly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. As I said, please, if you wouldn't mind, stop in if you're on Facebook and give us a like on Facebook. Also join our discussion group at Julia's Truckett Cafe Regulars. And if you wouldn't mind, subscribing to our newsletter at juliastruckettcafe.com/newsletter. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time. You have been listening to Julia's Truckett Cafe Truckin' News Hour. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Take care. Have a blessed day.